Welcome back, everyone. Our first session this morning is entitled Effective Uses of AI in Government. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for this morning, Dylan Hayden. Dylan brings over 2 decades of experience in the military and public sectors. His career has focused on data-driven policymaking, social equity, and improving public service delivery. He is passionate about emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and leveraging data to inform policy decisions. His interests range from pioneering new innovations in governance to upholding timeless public service values like ethics, transparency, and community empowerment. Dylan aims to share practical guidance that prepares public administrators to integrate advances like AI while championing technology as a force for social justice. Another important fact about Dylan, he's also Dr. Dylan Hayden, a graduate of the University of Baltimore's Doctor of Public Administration program. So without further ado, take it away.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Dylan Hayden. I've been in public service in some form since I was about 16 years old. My first job was with the New York State Parks Department. And I've actually been looking for ways to improve government, improve services to people for pretty much my entire adult life. So when, as technology is advancing, when ChatGPT came on board, I was like, bam, this thing's amazing. How do we use it for government? And none of that information was out there, so you all get a book now. We've talked about this morning with some of the other speakers, like some of these applications and the rules and things that are going into place with AI. But I think what would be helpful is if we just get on the same page. But when we're talking about AI, what is it? What do we mean when we're talking about artificial intelligence? So if we define it, it's a broad term, and it refers to any type of computer system that can mimic human intelligence. And this includes a variety of things. It could be understanding and processing language, like we see with ChatGPT, or with voice recognition technology like you have in smartphones with Siri or Alexa or things like that. Also, AI can recognize images. It can be used to help in the decision-making process. Within the field, the overall field of AI, you have a subset which is called machine learning, which uses algorithms to basically make certain predictions, and we can using various techniques, whether it's regression analysis, other types of statistical analysis, to help us make decisions and do things faster. So really, what AI is, it's basically that. It's a complex set of algorithms that say, if this, then that. They use probabilities to take different actions. And when we apply this in the field of public administration, we find that we can start to streamline certain services and automate repetitive tasks. We can provide valuable insights for policy making, as we saw earlier with analyzing very large data sets very quickly and gathering insights from that. And also, one thing that a lot of organizations are jumping on is chatbots, right? Bringing the vast wealth of government information in an easily accessible format to the general public, so we can improve and enhance citizen services. So AI in general, it encompasses a large range of technologies that can sense, it can reason, it can act, it can adapt, augmenting human abilities to deliver public services more efficiently and effectively. So now that we've talked about AI, I think now we're starting to get into this newer concept of generative AI, right? Which is a specific branch. It's a subset of artificial intelligence. And while AI in general, or classical AI, or however you want to call it, is focused on understanding data to drive analysis and decisions and efficiency gains, generative AI takes this a step further. It's about creating brand new content and data outputs that didn't exist before. So generative AI uses what it's learned from data to generate original text, images, audio, video. Now we've seen with OpenAI has their video bot, Sora, and it's been trained to make predictions based on context, on what the next sentence or word or paragraph will be, or in the case of ChatGPT, or in case of image generators like DALL-E or Midjourney that we discussed, where the next pixel should go to arrange a certain image based on the context that it's given. So some of the examples of how this can be applied within public administration, you could use it to simulate urban planning scenarios. It could generate 3D visual models of buildings and neighborhoods based on different development policies that we have in mind, helping planners and the public visualize potential changes. In the past, you'd have to hire, a design team and architects to kind of sketch a lot of this out. But if you just want that rough sketch of like, hey, what's this thing going to look like? Now you can do it in a lot less time. You could create education and training materials. How hard is it, especially when we are in a resource-constrained environment in the public sector, trying to find those training opportunities that are specific to our work and our jobs? You have to go through this procurement process and hire a contractor and get a vendor to come in and teach a training module. Now you can actually, based on certain policies, you can create your own custom training in a lot less time. For public officials, you can draft speeches, communication messages, tailored to different audiences. In the federal government where I work, we have this thing called the Plain Writing Act of 2010. So one of the challenges we have is a lot of our policy documents, a lot of the information that we have on government websites, it's in very legalese, technical jargon. Being able to translate that effectively into plain language for everyday citizens, that helps increase the engagement and the connectivity between the service providers and the people we serve. So the key difference here is generative AI's ability to produce completely novel, synthesized content and data. And we could just, there we go. Let's skip that. So, I just want to kind of get people's heads wrapped around this concept now. So, we are really in this paradigm shift with generative AI, right? For the past 20 years, we've become accustomed to this thing called Google and this concept called search, right? There is existing information that is put out there. Human knowledge is put on websites and documents, and it's out there, it's stored, it's indexed, it's categorized, and you just put in search terms and you go and you find it. So it's sort of like, it's really just, it's a big library, right? And prior to search engines, we went to actual libraries, remember that? And they would have things like card catalogs where you would look for the indexed information that was there. But say you were looking for information on how to change the carburetor on your 1978 Chevy Nova. before the internet and search engines, you'd go to a library, you'd look through the card catalog, to go to the section on book repair, on car repair. Perhaps you might find a manual on late 1970s Chevy Novas, and then you'd read through the book, narrowing yourself down to the information on carburetors. Or you could go to the librarian, who would be very knowledgeable, and they could probably direct you much faster to the specific information that you were looking for, which was effectively speeding up your search. The first search engines, right? Librarians. So now, imagine you could just walk up to the librarian and say, I'm looking to repair the carburetor on my 1978 Chevy Nova. And the librarian says, I have read every book on car repair in this library. Based on the steps I've read about replacing carburetors, I will write out a custom set of instructions to replace the carburetor on your 1978 Chevy Nova. This is a little closer to what we're talking about with generative AI. Now, the thing is, it's based on probabilities, right? So you could follow those instructions to the letter, but there's no guarantee that it's going to work, and you could probably rip out your old carburetor, stick in whatever it told you, but your car might not start. And that's probably the difference between going to a librarian to fix your car as opposed to a mechanic. So another way of thinking about generative AI, I like to think of, is for more esoteric cases. So where think of it almost like a chef, right? You say you want something, you're creating something that doesn't exist, right? So say you want a recipe for something like a banana lavender sweet potato pie. I don't even know if that would even be very good. Chances are, if you go to Google, you may not find a recipe for a banana lavender sweet potato pie. There very well could be. I don't know. I haven't checked. But if you went to a chef and you said, give me a recipe for a banana lavender sweet potato pie, the chef can say, you know what, based on my knowledge of the ingredients and the balance of sweet and savory and floral elements, I think I could put together a recipe that could probably be an edible pie. So it might be. I don't know. You play around with ChatGPT, create a recipe for a banana lavender, sweet potato pie, bake it, and let me know how it tastes. But that's more of what we're talking about with generative AI. So I think by now, most of the people in this room have heard of this thing called ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is what brought AI mainstream in the last, year and a half, 2 years. And when it first came out, my first instinct was to do what everybody does when there's some sort of technology you want to learn. You go to the University of YouTube and you look it up and you find some videos and you see how other people are using it and you say, oh, okay, that's interesting. So I watched, I don't know how many hours of videos on this, and one of the things that I saw was, all these videos about how you could use ChatGPT to get rich and make $10,000 a day, instantly writing copy for blogs and generate images of superheroes on rainbow unicorns. And here's this technology that supposedly has scraped the knowledge of the vast entirety of the internet, like the bulk of human knowledge that we've managed to put together. And the best use cases I could find were, help me write this LinkedIn post or help me write a better email to my boss. So I thought that there had to be a better use case for that. And I saw a lack of benevolent use cases or anything that was in the public interest. And that's what prompted me to write the Public Administrator's Guide to ChatGPT, which I believe you all have a copy. So Speaking of prompting, let's get into prompting. So through all of my, one of the things that I focus on in the book is the idea of prompting, which, as we talked about earlier with one of the previous speakers, was that you are essentially programming using natural language, right? Regular conversational language, but you are now effectively a computer programmer. And you may not have thought of yourself as that before, but now everybody is. We've lowered the bar to computer programming, essentially. Now, the way I wrote the book is, for most of my career, I didn't have the luxury of a tool like ChatGPT, but I could easily think of multiple situations in which a tool, if I had a tool like ChatGPT, like, here's how I would have used it. And so that's how I wrote the book. I went and I gave ChatGPT a bunch of scenarios, and I said, here, how would you act in this situation? And I gave it real examples from my past experience and saw what it came up with, and kind of said, well, whether that was actually, and a lot of times it was pretty close to what I actually did, except it did it in that fast. So to give you an example, when I was working for the governor's office in New York, so one of my first experiences when I was like 12 weeks on the job, not even 6 weeks, we had this little event called Hurricane Sandy, and kind of wiped out like a large section of New York and most of Long Island. And I was working for the Department of Labor at the time, and my job overnight became, I was tasked with coordinating all of our volunteers to staff the disaster assistance centers across New York City and Long Island. FEMA had set up these disaster centers. Most of our offices were closed because of the storm. Our employees had nowhere to go, so we had a bunch of volunteers on hand ready to go, and we said, okay, we're gonna get you to these centers. We're gonna give you a laptop, we're gonna give you, I was putting together go kits up in Albany and then shipping them downstate, so they had pens and forms and, data cards and everything that they needed to basically run as a labor services professional from a field operation. And so in the book, I asked ChatGPT to act as one of these field personnel and create the daily agendas and the checklists for all the equipment they would need to do their jobs effectively from a remote site, like a school gymnasium or a shopping mall, for example, because that's where we stuck some of these people. So if we look at the way that I structured the prompt, right? So first you have the role, which, if you think about it, one of the key concepts in prompting is assigning it a persona. Because the way an artificial neural network, which is what the structure of these large language models is, it's based to be similar on the actual neural network in your brain. So it's almost like if, I want you to make an important decision and I say, put your CEO cap on for a second, right? It now focuses your attention. So you're not searching your knowledge on, Shakespeare and chocolate chip cookie recipes. You're like, okay, let me put my decision-making hat on. So I narrowed the scope of its focus to assume the role of a Department of Labor career counselor. And second, I gave it some context to work with. And I told it, the resources that I gave my actual staff when I was in New York. So they had a laptop, a data hotspot, application forms, pens, etc. And most importantly, I gave it a task. That's where the programming part comes in. You are no longer asking, like in chat or in search, right? You're not asking Google a question. You are telling the computer what you want. So I gave it a task, and this is, I told it specifically what I wanted it to generate. Write out a detailed set of instructions that would help you or another volunteer in your situation get set up and deliver effective service. And then I also, sometimes I throw in some extras like ask clarifying questions as necessary to complete the task. It's conversational, working back and forth. You can reiterate certain elements of your prompt. This is what it came up with. And it gave me a detailed set of step-by-step instructions specifically tailored to the exact scenario I provided. Some of the details I thought were that were great were ensure that it provides privacy to maintain confidentiality. That's a great point. I didn't have that when I wrote these instructions in the moment, as this, disaster was unfolding. But having that is a very key component for somebody who's actually delivering services as a little reminder to have that on a checklist. Like, hey, just make sure I have, keep these conversations confidential because people are dealing with trauma in this particular situation. So essentially, ChatGPT was able to produce in a couple of seconds what it took me like a day and a half to produce back in 2012. So that was one example from the book, and there's more in there. But let's talk a little about some of the best use cases for generative AI in government right now. So the key area is going to be in communications, right? So one fantastic use, and I've talked to a lot of local government, municipal managers, people who are providing direct services day to day and interacting with their communities on a daily basis, drafting press releases, right? Now, notice I say draft press release. It is not final copy of press release. But this is the thing. Instead of having to come up with all of the original content and think through all that and expend that energy, you can now have a framework in a few seconds that you can say, you know what, I like this part, I don't like that part, and edit it, and it just takes a lot of the cognitive load off of you as a public administrator so that you can get the information out a lot faster. Social media content creation. That's the same thing. We're talking about engaging with communities, engaging with the public and the people that we serve, and social media has become an important part of that. And if you are, you can hire somebody to be full-time to do that, and it would still be an immense workload. But when we're talking about resource-constrained organizations, particularly in local government, smaller municipalities, they may not be able to hire the staff just to do social media for them. So it'll be like your township manager or something like that who is doing the press releases and the social media content. So being able to draft that and have it relevant to the situation at hand, it's one of these things. It just makes it more efficient. It reduces the cognitive load so that they can do higher order strategy and thinking and focusing on their real work instead of these types of tasks. Speech writing, again, the same thing. You get the idea. One example, and I'll try and show in a demonstration at the end, is policy document drafting. Again, drafting, not finalizing. Public service announcement, FAQs for government services, grant writing assistance, and it goes on. Another key area, data analysis. One of the key benefits of AI is the ability to parse large amounts of data that we saw earlier, particularly unstructured data. Like, not all the information out there comes in a nice, neat, and orderly Excel spreadsheet with all properly labeled columns, right? So it can detect patterns and find correlations in unstructured data. So this was one example I like where, somebody took a photo and put it in ChatGPT. I believe this was in DC, right? You have all these different signs. Who knows when you can actually park there? If you were a human, you would be sitting there analyzing that for 15 minutes trying to decide whether you could park there. And you'd still get a ticket, right? So, but this guy says it's Wednesday at 4 p.m. Can I park in this spot right now? Tell me in one line. Yes, you can park for up to 1 hour starting at 4 p.m. There. Your information has just been analyzed based on an image. It might be helpful to just double check to make sure that it's not lying to you, or you just say, you know what, I got $40, I'll pay the ticket. Analyzing large data sets, image analysis that we've shown, tech support. This is one that a lot of people don't think about, but I actually use all the time because having started a data analytics team at HUD in the Office of Fair Housing and now being in the Office of the Chief Data Officer, a lot of times I get people from other program offices asking me, hey, I'm working on this in Power BI, and how does it, and we have a working group and community of practice on a lot of these different analytical techniques. And someone will say, hey, I don't know how to do this. I'm having this problem with this DAX code. Like, what do I do there? And I'm just like, here's your answer. And then I come off looking like a genius, right? So I have become the tech support guy against my wishes. So. Automation and streamlining, and this is going to be another thing. So we talked about chatbots, right? A lot of organizations are really trying to get into the chatbot on the chatbot bandwagon, we'll call it. But why is that important in public service? Why? Because now, for certain information, we are no longer from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Right? You can have this information readily available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because everybody else in the rest of the world has unstructured hours and times. So they don't, this is just improving our services to them. Template generation, language translation. This as a former linguist, this is one that I like, and I also cringe about, because then, I don't see linguists and translators going the way of the dodo soon, but who knows? I don't know. But for the example, like we were talking about press releases before. An example I did with the Pennsylvania municipal managers, we drafted a press release. Well, maybe not everybody in your town all speaks English, right? You want to put out materials in other languages, and maybe it might be useful to know your community and know what languages are spoken predominantly in your community, because it's not always just going to be English and Spanish. It could be Polish or Tagalog or Russian, who knows? And you can write a press release and then say, rewrite this in Polish, and you can get a new one right there. Again, draft. You might want to, inquire with a Polish speaker who is fluent in that language to say, yeah, this isn't offensive to anybody, because you don't want to get in trouble with that. HR and hiring, and I think I might have an example for this from the demo. Being able to parse large amounts of text, right? We see this with like applicant tracking software now, right? Where the process for hiring in most organizations is really burdensome and annoying, where it's like upload your resume and then rewrite everything all over again in this form, and then we will look only for these 12 keywords, and if you didn't write those 12, then your application gets thrown in the trash after you spent 3 hours. Or you can upload a resume and we can write a program that just analyzes them, references them against the job description, and it can rank and say, okay, here's your 10 best candidates. Here are the people who have the most skills relative to what we're looking for. And then you can whittle that down and say, okay, here's my top 3 that I'm going to call for an interview. Wastes a lot less time for them, for the applicants, and also for your resource-constrained personnel. So now, with this, we have to talk about security and ethical considerations if you are using this in, especially in a public setting. So the biggest concerns with this technology is going to be security. Particularly in government, the biggest concerns are around personally identifiable information, PII. People who use government services are often asked to provide a ton of PII that has the benefit for us of making it easier to provide the services that they need. But it also carries with it a greater responsibility on our part to safeguard and protect that information. Most of the large language models on which these AI tools are being built, they're proprietary, with OpenAI or with Anthropic's Claude, or whether it's Meta's Llama, and we don't really have enough information right now about their security, and we have to take extra precautions. So about possibly or about potentially feeding PII into these systems. So fortunately, a lot of the tech companies, they are starting to come around to this idea because they want to ensure that there's not just security for the public sector, because that's not really their highest consideration, but a lot of the higher paying businesses that want to use their tools want to protect proprietary trade secrets, so they don't want that just being fed into the models. So in order to make them happy, they'll make the rest of us happy. Trickle down, exactly, right? So, so now they're improving the security and the quality. So now that we've seen that OpenAI, the Azure OpenAI system was recently approved by the federal government. It got FedRAMP approved so that it could hold sensitive, unclassified data like PII. So another consideration that we have to think about is oversight about how these systems spread information, right? So we have to be concerned about disinformation or misinformation. And the key to that in a public sector setting is human oversight, checks and balances, governance policies. And as more public serving organizations begin to adopt these tools, we really need to focus on the way in which we structure our governance and our data and our AI literacy for our staff, because the potential for leakage or security problems, it ramps up. And then we talked about this, developing comprehensive security strategies. Basically, just really think about it. That's all I have to say about that. Okay, so security is important, but we also have to talk about ethical use and the awareness of bias, because as public sector organizations, we do not want to perpetuate or spread biased information. And this is where, again, the governance policies will be crucial. Generative AI introduces several, moral questions that we have to contemplate. So, when we're talking about transparency, right? Can we understand how AI systems make decisions? Do these black boxes, essentially, since we don't understand, if we don't see what the algorithms are doing, like, can they obscure biases? Yes, they do. We already know the answer to that. Fairness, is it free from biases? No, it is not. So I wrote some of these questions a while ago. So but continuous tuning, fine-tuning, and auditing, and being the human check at the end of the process will always be a crucial element. So accountability, that's a big part too. Who is responsible when these AI systems cause harm, or they fail, or if PII is leaked, or who's going to be the one taking the hit on that? It's not going to be OpenAI, I guarantee you that. Their army of lawyers is going to come up. But you as whether you're the chief AI officer for your organization, or chief data officer, or chief IT, you have to be prepared for that eventuality of what happens if a staff member or employee is putting confidential information into a system that they shouldn't. And then, aligning with public sector values. Does the AI uphold constitutional principles and human rights? So, the guidance and the feedback, like if we're asking it for information, like is it producing information that's harmful? We have to be the check on that. So, and then one that I don't have on here is workforce. There's the big fear that AI is going to take all our jobs and we're all going to be out of work. But really what it's doing is, when you think about a job is a compilation of multiple tasks. AI is going to eliminate some of those tasks. So now we should be able to focus on higher level tasks that allow us to do deeper work. But what we have to think about in the public sector, think about like when you're contracting with an organization, right? Are they, if they're saying, oh, well, we use AI to do this process or that, is their main goal to use AI to basically, cut all their costs and lay off all their people? Well, maybe that's not an organization we want to do business with, right? If you're using it to, so in the way in which organizations use their AI is something that we have to consider when we're, and we're not just focused on, reducing the bottom line. It's how do we use AI to help our existing staff work better? So that should be our North Star, so to speak. Okay, so demonstration. I think we have some time for that. So here's one that, so in ChatGPT, let me close out of this second. Escape, nope. Why is that? There we go. Haha. Okay. Close. All right. So in ChatGPT, one of the things with the premium account you can do is now you can put in your own information and you can build a custom GPT that's trained on your information. So one that I built for a friend of mine from grad school. He's the township manager for New Hanover Township in Pennsylvania. So I built a chatbot trained on New Hanover Township's code of ordinances. And you can take the full code of ordinances, you can put it in there, have it as training data, and now this is what's called retrieval augmented generation. So instead of just generating based off of its trained data set, now it's retrieving additional information from whether it's documents or whether it's the internet, and it's augmenting what it already knows. So I could say, here's a couple of, can you explain the noise ordinances? And it's gonna go through and hopefully work. There we go. So the noise ordinances in New Hanover Township are outlined in Chapter 10, Part 3 of the Township Code, titled Unnecessary Noise. Here are the key provisions. Prohibition of unnecessary noise, Section 10, 301. It's blah, blah, blah. So you get the idea. But having this, and this is a very bare bones sort of chatbot. Now, right now I don't have it saved as public, but anybody, if I switched it to public, anybody with a ChatGPT account who can use custom GPTs, they can look this up and they can say, oh, I live in Norristown. I'm having a party this weekend. What do I need to know? And it'll say, don't make noise after 10 p.m. and make sure that, you park on the right side of the street. So that's one example. And another one, and when I talked about policy implementation, right? One thing that we do a lot of, we write policies in government, right, and in the public sector. How do we always know if a policy meets the standard of, say there's an executive order or there's a law that comes out and we now have to draft an internal policy that is in alignment with that particular regulation? So I could I'll take this example here. This is the Evidence Act of 2018, passed by Congress, and it says things like all federal agencies have to have a chief data officer, and we have to create open data plans, and all sorts of other fun things. So you could say you are the open, I can't type today, data division director at a federal agency. I won't tell you mine because, I don't want counsel's office breathing down my neck. Draft an outline for an open data plan. And this keyboard's throwing me off. That meets the requirements of the statute. Okay. And we'll see. But it's basically, it's pulling in that information from the text of the Evidence Act. And here you go. Introduction. Purpose of the plan: to meet statutory requirements, high-level summary, processes and procedures, ensure data collection tools established, incorporate user feedback. That's in there. Priority data assets. That's that from having read the act multiple times. I know these are true. So, okay, not a bad outline. I think it could use a little work. I've done this a few times and it's given me some better ones, but you can always, I can hit retry and have it spit out another one. If I don't like that, it can go through multiple times, or I could give it more feedback and say, especially if it misses something, and I can say, you know what, I know the act actually says I have to do this, and it'll say, yo, you know what, you're right, let me look that up, and it'll go back and it'll reiterate and generate. So, well, I think that's good for now. So, let's go to questions. Anybody got questions on that?
The only thing you have to put in is the question that you're asking to be answered by AI. Where do they get the evidence statute or whatever?
So I just took, I took this. This is where on GovInfo where the Evidence Act is posted. I took it, I downloaded it to the desktop, and then when I wrote this prompt, I uploaded this copy of the PDF, and here it is. It shows you the content of what it's reading right here, and it has now taken all this in as text. The thing about Claude, and I think ChatGPT's improved now, they have their input that you can put in is about 200,000 tokens, and a token, for those who don't know, is like it equates to about like a third or like a half a word or so, right? So you're talking 100,000 words, something like that. So you could upload almost an entire book, and it can process that information. I think it's somewhere in the range of about like 300, 400 pages of text that it can process with an input prompt. So you can upload a document of almost 300 pages, and then you can start to query, and you could say, tell me what's. You could take a book and you could say, summarize chapter 2 for me, and you could write your own Cliff's Notes. You can take. Yeah. So that's you're providing it that context. You're providing it that information, and then you can ask it to provide. The same way we did with the Excel spreadsheet that he did with the data set. It's the same thing here. So, a great one if you have. Since a lot of us are on Zoom or Teams and having video conferences, a lot of times some organizations you may record it and you may have a transcript. So for people, for accessibility purposes, you have a written transcript. You could take that transcript now, you could plug it in here, and you could say, as long as everybody, you have permission from everybody and nobody's afraid of what's being said in the meeting, you can upload that transcript and you could say, give me a summary of this, of this meeting. What are the key points? What are the action items? Are there any deliverables that somebody called for? Who is responsible for what, and when does it need to be done by, right? Give me a timeline. And if that was all said in the meeting, it'll give it to you, and it'll write it in bullet points, and now you have a whole set of minutes. You can use it for minutes for, municipal meetings. Some of them are actually doing that now. So, the use case, they're just going to keep growing, so.
All right.
Oh, one more. Yeah. Somebody asked me that the other day, like whether I, like ChatGPT or Claude, they're good for, I try to use all of them really, and kind of, I'll take elements of what I like from both, and, but with, Claude doesn't do image generation, so I don't use it for that. It's very good for like writing and drafting long form stuff, but ChatGPT is better, if you have the premium version, the $20 a month version, it's good for the more multimodal, where you can type in something and it will bring in information. It'll do search, so it's augmenting its knowledge with search from Bing or whatever, but also it can do the image generation. It can do like audio. It can do a whole bunch of other things all within one package that Claude doesn't yet do. So I kind of bounce them off each other, and like any neural network, the same way as any brain. Like if you ask it to write, you say write me this press release, it's going to write 2 very different versions. So you may say, I like part of that, I don't like part of that, and kind of combine them, and then you as the human put it all together and you say, this is what my final version is going to look like with my inputs and my tweaks and my edits, and after I ran it past counsel's office. So,
Well, thank you very much. Next up, we have a panel discussion, and before we get started on this, I think it's important to recognize that our moderator, Chichi, Nyagah-Nash, and our panelists, Babila, Lima, are both graduates of the Schaefer Center's Maryland Certified Public Manager Program. But wait, there's more. Chichi is also a member of the Schaefer Center's Advisory Board. Hey! Come on down. Chichi, it's all on you.
Hello, everyone. I have the distinct pleasure of moderating this panel, and it is the last thing that stands between us and lunch, so I will be very mindful of the time. I'm going to start off by introducing today's panelists. You also have their bios in the program. My version is going to be slightly different. All right, so going in alphabetical order. Berke Attila has a strong background in government and finance, ... all that is in the program. In 2019, Berke led the gain sharing initiative for Department of General Services in the city of Baltimore. This was a fleet management employee incentive initiative that yielded $950,000 in cost savings, of which $450,000 was paid back to the employees as an incentive bonus. I know, I heard a wow, which is amazing. It also garnered the National Association of Counties, or NACO, Best in Category Award. Fun fact, Berke is no stranger to U-Bolt, having attained his MBA in 2004 here at University of Baltimore, on the heels of a bachelor's in material science and engineering from Yildiz Technical University in his native Turkey. An avid cyclist and football, as in soccer, not the other football, fan, Berke can also be found out in the community advocating for the Chesapeake Language Project, which is a nonprofit organization on whose board he serves. You're very welcome. Monica Casanas has served for 2 years as the mayor of Colmar Manor in Prince George's County. Her work is rooted in the belief that diversity makes us stronger. She has a strong background in outreach, marketing, and communication with experiences in both corporate and nonprofit environments. She holds a master's in strategic comms from American University. Fun fact, a native of Colombia, Mayor Casanas is the town's first Latina mayor. Fun fact about the town. The town is home to Dueling Creek, which is a small waterway that, because of its secluded location, was a popular site for dueling. Duels were banned in neighboring Washington, D.C., but legal in Maryland. Dueling Creek was the site of more than 50 duels between 1808 and 1868. Babila Lima is the Director of Business Process Improvement Office for Baltimore City DGS, a role that he's transitioning back into, kind of, sort of, that he's transitioning back into, sorry, whoa, did I get the title wrong?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, all right. That he's transitioning back into after most recently serving as the Director of Baltimore City's IT's Enterprise Project Management Office. In his prior role as BPIO in his first iteration of it, his focus was on the business processes behind the delivery of government services and how to make them more efficient, including the adoption of automation. Babila has a strong track record of developing action plans that cut bureaucratic red tape. One way in which he has done this is by building a civic tech pipeline to identify and groom the next generation of public servants. And that will address the public service delivery challenges of the next 20 years, which is something that we've been hearing over and over here today about the need to build that next pipeline of folks who are going to do this great work. You can read about his integration of Python into city services in the printed bios. Fun fact. While posted in Mongolia for his Peace Corps service in 2010 to 2012, he organized a campaign to raise funds and awareness about the impacts of coal-burning stoves in rural Mongolia. As part of the campaign, over 8 days in the summer, he ran 267 miles to the capital, Ulaanbaatar. Yeah. Babila was awarded the Athlete's Glory Medal, which is the nation's highest award recognizing athletic accomplishments. And so these are the three amazing people that you have here with you. Okay, so two main focus areas that we want to dig into with the panelists. And one is really just a question of curiosity for me. On a scale, and you can just use your fingers, on a scale of 1 to 5, would you always have called yourselves early adopters of technology? Yeah, I would have figured that one. 5?
It's like 4, 4.5.
4.5? Okay, so you are those people who are always curious about the next thing coming out? Okay, then we're in good hands here to answer the questions. We've heard so many examples from Nishant and Dylan and the presentation that Berke and Andrew did of how AI is being applied at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local level. So here, my question to you is, can you give us 1 or 2, or as many as you can share in your 8 minutes, examples of how you have incorporated the use of an AI tool in your work? I'll start with you, Mayor Casanas.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm going to add another fun fact. I'm one of 4 Latina mayors in the entire state of Maryland. There are only 4. So pretty much everything that you were saying, Dylan, is what we're doing. So I am the mayor of a small town. It's called Colmar Manor. It's right on the border of Maryland and DC. We have 1,588 residents, 450 households. So it's not that big. I am not a full-time mayor. I'm a part-time mayor. But I do it full-time in any way that I can, right? Before I came on as mayor, we didn't have a town administrator. I didn't even know what a town administrator was. So I was very lucky that we were able to hire one. However, we still couldn't do everything that we needed to do, right? So all of these administrative tasks that you were talking about, and by trade, I'm a communications professional, so I understand the role, the critical role that communication plays in municipalities. For me, it was, okay, we have a newsletter that I hand deliver to every household once a month. It takes me 4 hours if I do it by myself. It used to take me an entire day to write the newsletter, an entire day. Now, with AI, half the time. So instead of 8 hours, it takes me 4. But that's still efficient for me. When we talk about social media, I try to engage and communicate with my community and those outside of my community with every communication channel that there is out there, and that includes social media. So what used to take me hours to create content for our Facebook page, for our Instagram, for our X, now takes me a fraction of the time. So for example, on the 18th of May, I'm having a big event in our town. I'm partnering with the county to host this event. And I'm trying to get vendors, and I'm trying to get people to come out to the event. Now, I'm the only communication professional in our town. I mean, as part of the administration, we have me, we have the town administrator, we have public works, we have police officers. None of them are truly qualified to craft, or nor do they have the time to craft these messages. So I asked our town administrator, craft me 10 social media messages that we can put out in the next 10 days. And I put, don't forget, AI is our friend. And he knew exactly what I meant because he's the one that introduced me to AI. So newsletter, social media, we've used it for proclamations. When we're talking about Hispanic Heritage Month, or if we're talking about Asian American Pacific Islander Month, please draft a quick proclamation that we can present. When we talk about, we're using it, or we've used it for traffic studies. So there are different companies that are using AI to do traffic studies in different towns. So the future of it that I'm looking forward to is the facial recognition, being able to read license plates, and hopefully being able to find people. So that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to, and that I hope that we can use AI for. What else? So you talked about minutes. So I sit on several boards. I sit on the board of the Maryland Black Mayors, and I'm actually the secretary for the Maryland Black Mayors. And our meetings go on for about 3 to 4 hours. So there's a ton of minutes that need to be created for that. Or at least, there's a ton of footage from our Zoom recordings. So I have done that. I have uploaded the video from Zoom, and I have told AI, please pull out for me the most relevant points made during this entire meeting and put it in a bulleted form or put it in a minute format. And it does it. What else have I done? I mean, it's just, I was telling someone else, I just throw stuff at it. I just throw things. Like, I'm just curious. What do you recommend we do in regards to, creating an event to increase engagement? And it'll give you a bunch of recommendations on what you can do to increase engagement in your community. So those are some sample things that we're doing right now. I think in the future, for example, we have an empty piece of land in our town. And it has been a very contentious fight with the current landowner. So it used to be a car wash, and the car wash closed down about 10 years ago. And the landowner has been wanting to put a gas station on that piece of land. We don't want a gas station, so luckily we won the fight, right? But I'm looking to ask AI, when you're talking about mapping and what can go, the possibilities of what can go on that piece of land, I'm looking to see, can AI help me come up with different scenarios that'll be beneficial not just to the town, but also to the landowner? Can it map out or create some type of a 3D design or whatever it is to show the potential of what can go on that site? So you sparked that in me today, Dylan. I'm like, oh, I need to go back to the office and talk to the town administrator and see what we can map out and create using AI. So those are some of the things that we're currently using it for.
Thank you very much. Babila, same question.
I'll give some personal and professional examples. So 8 minutes, I'll try to go through 4. So 2 personal and 2 professional. Personal, there are some foreign languages that I've learned that I try to work to maintain. And one of the use cases of generative artificial intelligence for me that's been helpful is using it to improve my vocabulary, improve my sentence structure. And so, I think Dylan gave an example of what a custom GPT looks like. And so I built one that is sort of a language assistant for different languages, where, if I journal, some days I will write in target language what I did that day. Obviously there'll be mistakes, I'm not a native speaker. I'll take an image, send the image to that particular GPT and say, identify the mistakes that I've made or the words that I could have used better, and catalog that, say, hey, this is a mistake, just remember. So I sort of use that to sort of improve. That same one will also generate index cards. I'm a visual learner, so I'll say, hey, that word that you said I messed up on, generate an index card for me in the way that I would, which is the word, an image of a concept, and like a sentence. And so I sort of use it, that's one way, it's on the sort of personal. Another on the personal is, I'm always trying to improve my writing, and there are some journals that I read regularly that there's certain authors whose writing style I appreciate, and I've sort of fed this other sort of purpose-specific GPT those writing styles, those articles, and explain these are the elements of that writing that I like, and I also, it triggers me sort of writing prompts. And they'll say, hey, here's a complex question, write a 5-part sort of traditional persuasive essay on it, and it evaluates how far away my writing is from that style. And it gives me pointers to say, hey, your persuasiveness was a 5, your strength of conclusion was a 3, but your use of evidence was a 6, your stylistic approach differed in this way, you could improve it this way. So those are sort of 2 personal ways. On a professional, I use it often as a sidekick in meetings. My role now is I work for the city central IT department, and I'm often in meetings with project managers across a number of different domains, be it infrastructure, applications, information security, broadband, and sometimes project managers and business analysts speak in different ways, and when we need to communicate with external partners, there's a need to sort of simplify the language. And so I'm often using sort of generative artificial intelligence as a sidekick to help quickly generate analogies. Say, hey, here's a complex concept. What is the most simple way to have this be communicated to an external partner in a real time in a meeting? And I can message that person and say, maybe explain it this way, or by analogy, get them to understand it that way. So that's sort of the third use. And then the last one is one that Berke alluded to, which is on the analysis side. One example, when I work to develop an executive order and policy around the use of generative artificial intelligence for the city of Baltimore, we wanted to understand what was the best way to communicate how people are already using generative AI. And so we had access to the network data, network traffic, because we managed the firewall. And so we had all this data that told us, this is how many times a week, a day, an hour, someone is actually using generative artificial intelligence. And so we just asked, hey, if we were to do this analysis, what's the best way to communicate to senior leaders that we should do this policy now and not wait? And it said, hey, well, you should maybe communicate a heat map that shows each day, each hour, this is the intensity of use, because this will be a very clear visual to help people understand, like, you're not introducing a guidance and a policy in an environment where there's not use. There is significant usage already in the city of Baltimore on our network. And so like this visual would help communicate that. So I'd say those are the 4 ways that have been helpful to me.
Thank you. And while the mic is passed, something occurred to me with Babila, as you're talking about how you overlaid your writing style with a specific style that you wanted to write, and the feedback you got about how your conclusionary statement was versus something else, or how you're grammatical. I started using Grammarly lately, and I didn't realize that I was going to get a report card every.
These are the mistakes you're improving.
Yeah, exactly. So not just the grammar mistakes, but it also says, ooh, your confidence went up 10%, or your jovial nature has been a decrease. I'm like, did I have a bad week? Was I not being as kind to people in my correspondence? And so, but it's very cool to see that, that kind of feedback about how it is you're corresponding. Berke, some examples in addition to the use for work orders.
Yes. So SDGS, Department of General Services, or sometimes we call Department of Generic Services, we were in charge of return to office. I tried to refrain from the phrase return to work because people were working. They're just like coming back to the office. So we had this narrative that we were going to be minimum of 3 days for certain operations, most of our operations. And City of Baltimore, as you can imagine, probably with any other jurisdictions, we have too much square footage and very little money to be able to do what we need to do. So we always thought that using remote work to our advantage to scale down our operations. But when the 3 days came in, we just realized that it was going to be a bit more challenging to really scale down our physical portfolio. What I wanted to demonstrate is, I'm an engineer, so I wanted to see if I were to create an optimization problem with this input. Minimum days in the office, no 2 people can share an office at the same day, and this is the current number of offices that you have on your footprint, and then this is the number of employees that you have. If you can create a schedule for me, that would be great, so that I could send this to everyone that has just like, well, I don't fit, I need more offices. Just like input here and tell me if you can create a schedule. Well, within maybe 15 minutes or so, it gave me an Excel application that I was able to create that. So it's a simple input. I mean, can you do that again in Excel? You might use it to do the data analysis and solver. If you know optimization, you can definitely build one. But this isn't literally chatting with it to give me the tool that now, starting with my chiefs, well, we can't fit, we need more offices. Just like 3 people, 2 days, 4 offices, schedule. Employee 1 in this office by this date, employee 2 in this office by this date, so tell me how does not work. Just like, thank you, I wasted your time, go back. So that was one great application, again, just helping me do something for me to do better. But what we realized, it's because of its closed nature, like Dylan used in his example where he fed this PDF, we have a lot of SOPs that is written, that is up to us. There's no interpretation, there's no hallucination, there's no grab. Everything that you need to know about that particular standing operating procedure is already there. So it is much easier now to interact. Working with Babila, we're hoping to do more of the closed ecosystems like personnel regulations, county, city code, charter. This is not up to interpretation. It's a set document and it fits, right? It is 300 pages, even less. Now, we want to create a supervisor's interaction where a new supervisor comes in and then there's a situation in their team that somebody lost a family member. This person does not know whether or not they could get bereavement leave, how many days, what are the consequences. Rather than tying up an HR, writing an email, open up the chatbot now, hopefully, you could type the question, where do I find this information? It could direct you to that section of the AM, or it could actually answer the question for you. Take that and now apply to all of your standard operating procedures rather than now I have to go to a folder, hope that everything is there, hope that everything is named properly. You might need a librarian to get you through that. Or you could put all of this information first and say, I want to create a better structure, naming. I want to create the SOP that all looks the same, but also read all this And if I have a question, just like point me to where it needs to be. Then we realized that, you know what, we don't have that many good SOPs written. And then we wanted to write one for the custodial applications. And then my chief was struggling. I'm researching this and that. And I remember we were having coffee nearby City Hall, Baltimore City. And I pulled up the application on my phone and I just like wrote a custodial SOP for a local government and give me the bones of it. While we were sipping, it produced, I copied and pasted and sent it to him. And I remember his face looking at me, what did you do? Just like, I didn't do anything. I just
like
put
a sorcerer.
Yeah, I just prompted it. And again, it was, my job now is to show people kind of, this is available, this is out there. You don't need to replicate what I'm doing. Just know that it can do many things for you. And just go into that sandbox, literally. Try and improve. It made the coding pseudocode. We are all programmers now. If you can speak English, it can, I mean, even if my broken English, it helps me. And as you see, just like while he was typing and I was typing, sometimes you don't spell things right. You don't even have to worry about it. It fixes it for you. And one more thing, if I have time, is it really helped me create better interview questions, but not the questions themselves. Because I tell them, here's my pain point for this position. Here's the position's title. This is what I really want for this person to work with. Not just the class specs, but what I really need for this person to do. Give me situational and behavioral questions, but not just give me the questions. Give me an example of what a good answer might look like, and give that to me. So now what I can do, I can produce those questions, I can edit them, bring my panel, educate them what I'm trying to do, show them the questions. Hey, situation, task, action, result. If somebody speaks in that terms, this is a good one. And what is the situation? And now I can sit down with my panel, get to those questions really fast, explain to the panel what we're looking for. So when the interviewee answers the questions, the panel is not hearing differences. So it kind of creates an equality and inequity on the panel side to see this is exactly what we want, and it's not up to interpretation, because now we can quickly disseminate what is a good answer, what is a bad answer. But rather than spending all these time, now we get to these questions fast. Now put them in a repository. Now you have many questions. Next time you're looking for an accountant, give me which questions we use. Boom. I mean, we could have 80 minutes of conversation, and I can spiral out many questions, but these are the ones that we use for now.
Thank you very much, Yuri. Okay, we've actually made up some time, so thank you. What advice would you give to the administrators in the room who are just beginning the journey of exploring AI? So advice, tips, mistakes you've made and learned along the way. How can you help the rest of us become as AI savvy as the three of you are?
I don't know if I'm savvy. I just like to play with things. And I actually am very grateful to my town administrator, because he's the one that introduced me to it. I wouldn't have known about it. But I will say that in a way, when you say that you're using AI or you say that you're using ChatGPT, people don't know what you're talking about. And for some, it might be like the secret, like it's a little secret that no one is talking about, right? And my advice would be talk about it, be open about it. Say, I used AI to do this. So I'll give you an example. I don't know if this happens very often, but I have one council member that I don't get along with. I just don't. And I happened to share something that I created using ChatGPT, and he emailed back. And he used software that detected whether I created this or not. And so when I received that reply, I was like, thank you for pointing this out. I wanted you to know that I actually got invited to be on a panel to talk about AI. So thank you for letting everyone else know that's on the council that I use ChatGPT, because this is how we've been using it in our town. So my advice is be open and discuss how you're using it, and share the knowledge that you've gained with other mayors or other council or other staff, because it really, just hearing all the ideas and how everyone is using it. I'm planning on going back home today. When we talked about ordinances, I have a parking ordinance that is ridiculous. It's about 40 pages long. Why do we have a parking ordinance that's 40 pages long? I never thought, let me stick it in ChatGPT and have it tell me how this can be improved. We're actually going through a process where we've sent all of our ordinances to a company that is evaluating it and sending it back to us, which is costing us a ton of money. Imagine if I would have just used at least some of it, use ChatGPT to analyze it.
They're using ChatGPT too.
Oh, so I'm paying them to do something that we could have done on a local level. But that's my advice. Just play with it. Just throw things at it. It's not perfect. When you talk about the human interface at the end of it to check everything that you do, that's real. So that's also like a big piece of advice. It's not going to solve your problems, but it'll definitely cut your problems in half. The other part, you need to do the heavy lift.
Babila, if you would, do you mind talking a little bit, because I know how much work you've done on the policy creation and governance side. If you're part of your answer can be focused on that, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Before I jump into that, I realized there was one thing I sort of glossed over in the response to your last question. Many of the examples sort of have focused on text as an input. For the initial example I gave around sort of a language assistant, I should have made more clear that this was my handwriting. And I think those of you who haven't seen my handwriting, it would be more impressive if you could actually see my handwriting. It was my writing in another language that wasn't mine, so even more messy. Something that, hey, this is what I did today, and then taking a picture of those scribbled hieroglyphics, and then sending that to say, okay, what are the mistakes in my grammar, my writing, my syntax, and then it giving back to me in text that I could read, right, on the prompt in the target language. I glossed over the fact that the input wasn't text. The input was a picture of my handwriting, which speaks to the strength of the optical character recognition underlying the tools. So I wanted to
Thank you.
Emphasize that before answering your...
I appreciate that. Yeah, that makes it even cooler.
The link for better handwriting courses available.
It should have. It was bad. It didn't comment on my handwriting, but it's an area that I recognize I need to improve. You've seen my handwriting. It's not good. But you asked about recommendations or suggestions around the policy piece. I think a couple things that have been clear. There are, and Nishan spoke to this, so I'll sort of reinforce that. There's a lot of research and work that is happening in parallel, and there is no need to sort of reinvent the wheel. There are a number of networks that are nonprofit and government, education, that I think if you leverage these, you can get to a place much faster. That was sort of an approach that really worked for us. One thing that we've seen be really helpful is finding good educational partners. And so in our case, for example, we needed to spend a lot of time, and we still are, on the education and outreach. And after we did the work to establish what the policy would be for the city, the next hurdle is like the outreach and education. And so much of our communication is on we target at an 8th grade level, because you're not writing to the audience of folks that are primary users. You want to make sure that across the city or across your organization, everyone the information is approachable, and everyone can understand the principles and how to comply. And so, we are finding that establishing partnerships with like Morgan, for example, is a good partner. Morgan State has a program it's the Center for Ethics in Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning. And when we scanned like what training was available, because we're putting together a training path to make sure that like people understand what's in the executive order, why it's there, how to comply, what use cases are verboten, and what other training we recommend. We recognized that there wasn't good training on the ethical component. And so we said, hey, you guys would be a good partner, and how can we develop material that targets like where we are and where we want to take the workforce. And there will be agencies that move sooner and take on the use cases that you talked about of like, hey, we've got this available space for development. how do we sort of think through it in a way that is useful to us. But there will also be people who are not there yet, and I think that's where many folks will see a greater benefit. There was a really, one thing that sort of stuck with me, and I think I mentioned this to you, Chichi. There was a Harvard Business Review article I saw about the way that the use of generative artificial intelligence by consultants changed the outputs. And one of the findings was that the increase in productivity was greater in the more mediocre staff than it was in the higher performers. And that was a surprising finding, because what they found was that it was an equalizer in a way, and that it shifted my thinking about the need to not focus on the sort of everyone that raised their hand and said, I'm a 5,
Right.
I'm an early adopter, but the greatest benefit could be on focusing on the folks that said, I'm a 2, I'm a 3, I have an aversion or a phobia around this use of this technology. Like, we need to focus our efforts there. We need to make sure that we're communicating at the level to reach the broadest possible audience. So I would say that those are the things I would recommend.
Thank you. And close us out, Berke.
Yes, happy to. Well, I'm going to lean on in what Babila said. We've been talking about democratizing the information gathering and analysis, and then this is the tool to do that. And really, the work is not the people that can do this work already. It is for them to do more, to do better, faster. But if you have more people, really, by economies of scale, are able to do this types of analysis or productivity gains in your organization, those little things are going to start adding up a lot. And then you will find yourself in an organization where the most of your time you're spending is on really coming up with a plan and or answering a question, rather than the dirty work of gathering. And now the most of the time can be analysis. And if you do that, you'll be successful. And one thing that I would like to say is trust but verify. To Dylan's earlier point, just like don't take for granted, especially if you're not using a closed system like a PDF document, because it goes out and searches for you. Taking its fast to play, but maybe slow to deploy to outside, that's the part that you may need to do your QA, QC. I'm pretty sure as the time goes by, it's just going to be better. But right now, you see inconsistencies as you ask the same question. Again, Dylan mentioned it when he asked to provide an outline, that it looked a little bit different. So trust but verify is quite important. And really talk to those people that are on the scale of 1 to 3, not 4, 5, 4s and 5s. They're there, they're already adapted, pretty sure they're already working with it. Make their work visible to the other people that may not even think about how this might be applying to them, because they may think just like, I don't have complex data problems. But the more you see how we're using it, to earlier point that Babila made, go to these forums, go to Andrew's AI for budget forums, you go to the meetups, just try to expose yourself to other people. And there is ton of free training if you just go to even YouTube. There are people out there grabbing any people at any level. I just don't even know how to access. I don't even know how to use this. I don't know where to put the input. Any kind of information is out there how to utilize one of these bots. But push your organizations also to put a governance structure, because without it, the risk is somebody's going to do something wrong, and the bureaucracy is going to clamp down, and then you as an organization might lose the ability to use the AI. So that's a threat, in my opinion, that what we need to really work towards. And if more people are already using it, that's what we realized. I think the number of the pings were about 300,000 by week, some odd number.
Yeah, when we looked at this most recently, you're referring to how many people in the city, on the city's network and devices were using generative artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
When we looked at this most recently, over the last 3-month period, it was over 1 million.
Over 1 million. So again, I'm glad for Babila's vision on this one, because rather than should we use it or not, we're already using it. So let's try to ensure that we're using it right and everybody's empowered in that. So that's my closing for you all. Are we allowed to take questions?
We are a couple minutes over, but I think if there are any burning questions, like, if anyone really needs to get a question out, I think we'll make time for 2. If there are any burning questions in the room. People are hungry. All right.
People are hungry.
Babila has a question.
Yeah, if
Okay.
there's not a question, I have just one request after what I've seen today. For my next either cookout or birthday, I would like to know your availability to do my introduction.
I'll use AI to write it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before we get to lunch, we're going to have some closing remarks from this part of the day from the one and only Roger Hartley. Roger, would you like to come up and step up? He used AI. He originally had a 3-page script, and it's been boiled down to 1 sentence. It's amazing. It's amazing.
One sentence with 400 parts, several hundred subparts, and then 15 more subparts beneath that. My good friend and colleague Ann Cotton asked me how long I would speak, and I said 45 minutes for her. So here goes. First of all, I want to say thanks to everyone for joining us here today. What an absolutely wonderful morning. I love so much about our College of Public Affairs, but especially our magnificent Schaefer Center for Public Policy. This event every year is absolutely informative, but it's also personally inspiring to me. So I'm going to be running home and learning as much about ChatGPT as I possibly can. The college is made up of 3 magnificent schools: a School of Public and International Affairs, a School of Criminal Justice, and a School of Health and Human Services. And along with the Schaefer Center for Public Policy, 2 additional magnificent centers: a Center for Advancing Prevention Excellence and a center also dedicated to public safety innovation. Please check us out. We'd be happy to help you with any public service issues, ideas, or problems. But going back to today, I want to thank our amazing speakers who took time today to help us explore the intersection of artificial intelligence as a tool for government to help us improve lives. I appreciate the efforts to not only demystify the technology a bit, but also to help us see how quickly AI is being used productively in day-to-day work to serve the public. Our speakers today focused us on important regulatory questions: how to improve government efficiency, how to improve equity, how to improve accessibility to government, its ethical use, and then also the important concerns of security. Again, let's give everyone a round of applause who spoke. Thank you. As we move in the next part of our program, our Schaefer Center awards some thank yous. Thanks to Dr. Ann Cotton and her amazing staff. Thanks also to our faculty, and thanks as well for all of those parts of our college and our university who continue to build fantastic cutting-edge events like this that really inspire leaders. And thanks to our remarkable Schaefer Center board members who are here with us today for their support. And thanks to all of our elected and non-elected state and local leaders who have joined us here today. Before I end, I want to recognize the most important thing to us at the University of Baltimore, which is our students. Would our students please stand up if you don't mind, and please don't be shy. Please look at them and hire them immediately. They're amazing. If they don't already have jobs, don't steal them immediately from their employer, but do look for them for their next employment. This is a remarkable group of students. They're part of an amazing program called Next Gen Leaders for Public Service that was created by our Schaefer Center for Public Policy. It's led by Pat Mickus and Calvin Butler. One of the most important and essential ingredients of the program, among other things, is that they have created almost 200 paid state and local government internships to help inspire our students towards magnificent careers in government, but also to add capacity to state and local government all over Maryland. So great appreciation to Next Gen leaders. And finally, with 45 minutes to go, as we move into lunch, I want to offer my personal congratulations to Senator Ben Cardin on his award today. It is truly the honor that we're bestowing today is just a small, tiny piece of gratitude from the University of Baltimore, our Schaefer Center, and our entire room today for your remarkable service to the state of Maryland and our nation. Thank you so much.